All right, then we have a new podcast here, and we have Ramon Rosas here with us. It's actually the first time I talked to him, so we actually gonna have really real conversation today. How you doing,
Yeah,
Ramon?
I'm doing fine. And you?
I'm very good, thank you. So you live in Toronto right now, but you're not in Toronto at this moment, right?
Yeah, I live in Toronto, but I am spending some time in Brazil, in Recife, with my family.
Okay, cool. So you're getting to how long since the last time you've been to Brazil?
8 years, pretty much. Yeah,
8 years. Okay, so you've been
yeah,
8 years in Toronto.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And
How's it?
I never came back to visit. This is the first time.
Yeah. How's the visit going?
It's going pretty well. My wife was here with me, but she left on the end of February
Okay.
because she couldn't stay anymore.
Is your wife Canadian?
Yeah, she's Canadian,
Oh, cool.
and she
Okay.
was on a tourist visa, and she could only stay for 3 months.
Oh, okay. Fine. And when did you decide to go to Canada? When you got to that point when you say, okay, I'll go to Canada. Canada is my place.
Um, I'd like to think that was about 2013. That's when I first thought about going to Canada. And the idea just started evolving slowly in my mind. And I just started doing research and finding out how what Canada is about and everything. And eventually, I talked to my mom and my dad, and they were like, if that's what you want, if you really don't want to stay here anymore, and that was the case. So they just supported me, fully supported me. Thank God. I'm grateful to them.
Yeah.
And yeah, we started contacting some agencies to know how I could go live in Canada, legally, obviously.
Yeah. Okay. And how old were you then?
In 2013, I was about 21, 22 maybe.
Okay. Yeah. That's a good
Yeah,
age to start thinking about immigration and all.
yeah, pretty much.
And you went to Toronto as a student?
Yeah, I first went on a student visa with it's a 6 month student visa with 6 months of work. So it's a 12-month visa, but the first 6 months is just studying English, and the second 6 months is just working, right? But that wasn't a guarantee. This visa, as far as I know, doesn't exist anymore. But yeah, it was exclusively working, exclusively studying. You couldn't really do both at the same time.
That's cool. So you let's go back to 2000. You went to Toronto in 2013.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back to 2013 and you decided, all right, I want to move
Sorry,
to
no.
Canada.
The idea started in 2013, but the actual flight was in 2014, in April 2014.
Okay, okay. So let's go back to that period when you decide,
Okay.
okay, I'm gonna move to Canada. You went, you talked to an agency. You decided that you
Hmm.
wanted to study English there,
Yeah.
and there was this visa. Did you
Hmm.
study? Have you studied English before in Brazil?
Yeah, I went to Cultura Inglesa, and I think that was the only private school I went to. The other English I studied was in high school, just regular
Okay.
English.
Hmm. And you decided, okay, I'm gonna study English in Canada.
Mhm.
You booked your flight, you said goodbye to your family, you hopped on a
Yeah,
plane,
pretty
and
much.
you went to Toronto.
Yeah.
You arrived in Toronto. What happened? How was the sensation there? How was the feeling?
Cold. That was the first thing I felt. It was
Okay.
April, so it was just the end, the tail end of winter, and it was 1 degree Celsius. I remember, and I left Brazil. I left Recife here at 30-ish, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, it was pretty shocking. That the
Okay.
temperature difference is enormous, and that was just 1 degree, right? It gets much worse.
Yeah, it does. It does. When you arrived in Toronto, did you have a place to stay? Uh,
Yeah, I had a homestay, they call it, right? The school in Canada does this process where they get families to accept international students to
okay.
stay in their homes, and they receive money for it, right? From the
Mhm.
school, and I believe the government also incentivizes that, so they give them some money as well. Um, so yeah, people just do it because it's profitable, right? You just have to provide food for whoever's staying in your house,
Mhm.
and you know, a nice living home, basically.
Oh, cool. Was it a nice stay?
Yeah, yeah. They were very nice. It was a couple, a Filipino couple, and they were very nice to me. You know, they always cooked me food, and it was at first it was a little weird, right? Because they made Filipino food, and I wasn't really used to that. It was a bit
Yeah.
shocking, but it was delicious, right? It's just a little bit of prejudice, you know. You look at the food and it's so different, and you're like, "What is this?"
Yeah.
right? But it's actually delicious, and I eventually got over it and started eating, and I was like, "Oh, this is pretty tasty." And then you know you start to adapt, right? Because you have that initial shock, but you have to get used to things, right? You can't just live in fear and don't try anything.
Yeah, of course. Do you still have contact with them?
No, no, unfortunately not. They were like their English was like pretty rudimentary. Like it wasn't. You couldn't really talk to them for very long, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, you very quickly got to a point where like the conversation just stopped because their vocabulary and their pronunciation and everything and listening just didn't really reach, right? So you just
Yeah.
had to stop talking, unfortunately. But yeah,
That brings me to an interesting point. When you tell me that those people they were living in Canada, and if they're part of this program, they were living legally in Canada, and they didn't speak English very well. Do you think that
uh,
English you got frozen? Hello, Ramon?
why is it
You
doing
Paul?
this?
Yeah, I think you're back now.
All right.
All right, no problem. But I can edit that out in post production.
All right,
Okay,
cool.
so those people, Philippines, if they're part of this program, I imagine they were legally staying in Canada.
Yeah, yeah.
They didn't speak English very well, as you said.
Mhm,
Do you
mhm.
think that not speaking English very well is a problem for people who are staying in Canada?
Definitely, yeah. You end up you end up being isolated to groups, right? Instead of
Okay.
really experiencing the country and the whole culture as a whole, you just isolate yourself in your nationality, right? You're just gonna hang out with Brazilians or hang out with Filipinos, and there's so much more than that. And the
Yeah.
city is so interesting, and it's amazing, really, right? You just have to get out of your bubble. Like,
Yeah.
and if you don't speak English very well, you're gonna stay in that bubble. Like, you know, some people are fine with that, you know, do whatever
Mhm.
you want. But if you really want to experience other things and grow as a person, you have to get out of the bubble.
That's cool. That's good. Also, I've heard that you can get like you don't get so nicer jobs if you don't speak English well. Is that a thing or
Definitely,
not?
definitely, yes, yes.
Uh,
People don't tend to hire you if your English is not very good. Like if you want to be a barista and work at Starbucks, right? It's an entry level job, but
mhm.
you're not going to get hired if you don't speak English, right? Because you're required to talk to people in you know in your daily life and understand what other people are ordering, right? So
Yeah.
like a lot of jobs are like that, and you need communication, right? Communication is a big thing. If you don't
Okay.
speak English very well, you're going to be extremely limited in your options.
Okay. when you first arrived, you could only study, right?
Yeah.
And then you spent 6 months only working.
Yeah. I
Mm.
spent 6 months trying to find a job because not
Okay.
everything is not everything is nice, right? Not everything is
Yes.
easy. So it's not a guarantee that you're gonna get a job. You have to find the
Hmm.
job, right? So I tried to find a job for 6 months and I just couldn't. It's not easy to find a job. There's so many people,
Okay.
right, trying, especially for an immigrant with a not so amazing level of English. Then they don't, they're gonna give that position to someone else, right, who speaks
Uh-huh.
English very well, right?
Okay.
There's definitely that deterrent. Um,
Uh-huh.
so yeah, I spent 6 months trying to find a job and I couldn't.
And you couldn't. So after those 6 months, not finding a job, how was life? What happened there?
After 6 months, I already had a plan, right? Because after that visa, you're not required to actually have that work experience in order to progress to the next visa. So that was a good thing, right? Because I couldn't find the job. So after that visa, I went to a college visa, right? So I went to college and I got I paid the all the tuitions and everything, and then I got the documentation ready, and then talked to the government, and they gave me the college visa, and then I went to college for a year, basically.
Okay. So you moved from a language student visa to a college student visa.
Yes.
And with that college student visa, could you work?
No, I was
No.
supposed to just it was full time study, and then after this one year, they were gonna give me 1 year work visa. Right? It was I don't know if that visa still exists, but it was a visa that was depending on how long you stayed in college. It was how long they gave you an amount of time to find the job and get the experience.
Yeah.
Right? So if
I
you did one
think
year in college,
yeah, I think it still exists. It's the
it does.
PGWP,
Okay.
post
Okay.
post graduation work permit, something like
Hmm.
that. So
Yeah,
depending
that's
on
probably
the
what I did.
yeah, depending on the time you spent working, studying, you could spend equal amount of time working.
Yeah, exactly. So I did the minimum. I did the bare minimum, which was very stressful. Let's leave it at that because I had 1 year to find a job and get 1 year's worth of experience to be able
Okay.
to apply for the permanent residency, right?
Uh,
So as soon as I finished college, I was already job hunting like crazy because I had to find a job. Right? I finished college in December and I had until April to find a job. Right? Because by April of the next year, I needed to have 12 months of work experience. So I had basically 4 months to find a job. Right? And
wow.
having that experience, but I couldn't find a job in 6 months. I was freaking out. Right? I was like, I'm not gonna find this job in 4 months. Luckily, I did, and uh, and I got the work experience. Thank God.
And what was your first job in Canada?
I worked as a plumber.
Plumber. And
Yeah,
how is it working as a plumber in the Great White North? Ramon, are you there?
hang on a sec.
Okay.
I think my phone is switching Wi-Fi's. I'm not sure why.
Oh, okay. So how is it working as a plumber in Canada?
It was a great experience actually. Plumbing. I come from a background of computers. I just I did computer science in college here in Brazil, and I've been a computer geek my whole life, computer and gaming, all that. And to go from that to a plumber it's a huge difference, right? It's a huge shock.
Yeah.
inexperience. Like I literally had to have my hands on the tools working, and going up and down stairs, going to basements, messing around with pipes and hardware, right? But it was great. Like it was, honestly, I don't regret it one bit. I worked as a plumber for 5 years,
Mm.
and it was just a great it's a great lifetime skill that I acquired, right?
Yeah, of course.
And it just teaches you so many things about how things work, how a house works. It was just great. I loved the whole thing. At the end of the day, it wasn't for me, right? Because I'm a computer guy, right? So it wasn't for me. So I ended up leaving the job after 5 years. But it was in good terms. I left in good terms, and it was just because I didn't want to do it anymore. I just wanted to pursue other things.
Uh-huh. That's cool. That's cool. And how did you meet your wife there?
She was my teacher.
Okay, got it. So she
Yeah,
was your English
that's
teacher.
the yeah, that's the general reaction people have. She
Uh-huh.
was my teacher. Yeah, she was
Okay.
on the last month in this school I went to in Canada. Every month is a different teacher, right? So on my
Okay.
last month, before I had to go find a job, she was my last teacher, right? That was her, and I just liked her in general. So I on my last day, I asked her out, and we just started hanging out, and eventually, got together.
So that's the lesson we get. Stay in school, teacher, students. Stay in school, kids. All right.
Yeah.
So that was in the English school.
Yes, that was in the English school before the
Okay,
college.
so that's a long relationship you have.
Yeah, pretty much until today. That's pretty much 8 years at this point.
10 years. That's nice. That's cool.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
in your first semester in Canada, you found yourself a wife.
pretty much yes.
And okay, when you started college, did you still stay with the Philippine family?
No, 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 no. The homestay was for 1 month, right? It's just
Oh,
so you have
okay.
a place to go when you arrive, right?
Oh,
But
okay.
in that period you're in there, you're supposed to already be looking for some like a more permanent place, right? That you're gonna stay.
Yeah.
Um, Unfortunately, I couldn't find it, so I had to extend my period there from 1 month to 2.5. But
Okay.
eventually, I found a place where I could rent and stay. It was a Brazilian lady, and yeah, it was fun, but you know, there was a lot of stress, you know, because you have that amount of time, or you're gonna be homeless, right? So you have to find a
Yeah.
place, and you don't really have any friends or anyone you can say, hey man, gonna spend some days at your house. You don't have that, right? So if you don't
Yeah.
find a home, you're screwed. It's tough, but it's all great experiences. It sounds a bit menacing when you say it like that, but it's just great. You know, I would go through everything I went if I could go back. You know,
That, that's nice. That's nice to hear. Uh, how is life in Toronto different from life in Recife?
the first thing that comes to mind is security. You just feel
Okay.
so safe, right? Um, in the first few months or maybe a few years, you still have that Brazilian mentality where you're walking around in a dark alley or a dark street and you're freaking out, but nothing really is gonna happen, right? Because nothing
Yeah.
really happens. There is basically no crime to the general population. Crime is really just speaking about Toronto. Like Toronto is an extremely big city, right? There's a lot of people there. It's one of the biggest cities in Canada, so there is gonna be crime, right? But the crime pretty much stays within the gangs. The gangs just fight amongst themselves. They don't really involve other people, right? So the
Okay.
general population is just living their normal lives without really, encountering any crime or really being afraid of anything. And that's a great feeling, man. Coming from Brazil, and you don't have to worry about stuff like that. You can leave your friend's place at 3 in the morning and walk through a dark street with no one, and you're chilling, right? You're just listening to music and you don't care because nothing's gonna happen.
Yeah.
It's just great.
That's something.
Hmm.
That's something people really want you to look for. And I think
Yeah,
most people who want to immigrate, they think about that. They, okay,
hmm,
I want to immigrate because it's safe, because you get your money's worth of anything you wanna get.
definitely, yeah. And security is a great point, but the infrastructure of the city, like everything is well taken care of, clean. There's no sewer like bursting somewhere and sewer water like beside my building here. In front of the building, there's sewer water all over the street. Like that doesn't really happen there. I mean,
Yeah.
you have the occasional break of a pipe or something, but it very quickly gets fixed and everything go back to normal and it's clean and nice. It's just great, like honestly.
Okay. And how is life in winter? Because it gets pretty
It's
darn cold there.
yeah, yeah. That's the biggest negative about Canada and Toronto specifically, because Vancouver is not so much like that. The city gets very dark, right? You lose the sun, basically, and that really makes you depressed when you don't have the sun. Like very often, sometimes you spend weeks without seeing the sun. It's just gray clouds every day, right? In wintertime, you start seeing sunlight around 7-ish in the morning. Here it's like
Yeah.
4:30 in the morning. We see the sun, right? The sunlight.
Yes.
But there's like in wintertime is around 7 in the morning. You start seeing sunlight, and it goes away around 4:30 in the afternoon. So everything's dark, right? You just feel like you're in a cyberpunk movie. It's
Yeah.
just dark and cold, right? Um, so if you really have like a strong mind to go through that stuff, right? Then you're gonna be fine. And it really helps to have friends and have somebody to hang out with, to go to their
Mhm.
place, or they come to your place, or you guys go somewhere. The street life is still very much alive. Don't get me wrong, right? There is people on the street all the time. Even when it's like -20, there's people on the street because you have all the gear, right?
Mhm.
To be able to be outside at -20. But people don't really stay outside. They go somewhere. They're like, okay, we're gonna leave my place, take the streetcar, which is a bondinho.
Okay.
They take the streetcar and they go to whatever place, right? We have streetcar and buses and subway. Right? You take your public transport and you go to wherever you want to go and you go inside.
Yes. But there's still life. I think you got frozen again. Um, yeah, just let's just wait till he comes back. I
Hello,
think he's back now.
hello.
Hello, Ramon?
The audio comes back before the image actually
Yeah,
moves.
that's all right. That's all right. So
Okay.
you're saying that
Sorry.
basically things in the city they still work. Yeah, they don't
Yeah,
stop
everything
because
works
of winter.
normally. Like, yeah, nothing stops because of winter. People are still going to work. Everything's moving, right? You
Hmm.
just have the occasional annoyance with the snow, right? Because when it snows a lot, then you start having huge snowbanks on the side of the road,
Yeah.
right? Where the curb is. Then you have a lot of snow accumulating there, and eventually there's mud, and the snow becomes this really ugly thing,
Yes.
right? It's not like nice and fluffy and white anymore. So it starts to look a little ugly,
Okay.
but you just have to live with that, right? Because if you're gonna stay in the city, you have to live with that. That's why a
Yeah.
lot of people go to Vancouver because they can't take that kind of stuff, so they just go to Vancouver.
That's something nice that you said, because I got lots of questions about that. Like, okay, Canada's cold. It's winter. It's cold. There
Hmm.
is you can't go outside because it's too cold. How are you gonna leave in the cold? How are you gonna wake up in the morning and it's so cold that you can't take a shower? That's so cold. But if you pay attention to whatever you said, you didn't mention how cold it was. You mentioned
Mhm.
that it gets dark, a lot darker than usually
Yeah.
it is. You mentioned that people have the annoyance of having snowbanks, and that you have to get more together with your
Mhm.
friends. But you didn't
Yeah.
mention code. Isn't code a problem?
I mean, you just learn to ignore it.
Yeah.
Like at first, it's extremely shocking, right? When you feel minus 30 for the first time, you just don't want to feel it anymore, right?
Okay.
I had to leave my place one day. It was minus 35, and it was incredibly, like, you can't even describe it. You have to feel it for yourself. You can't describe that level of cold, but it literally feels like a thousand of needles in your skin, like just going in, right? And
Okay.
it's brutal and it's extremely dangerous, right? They don't recommend you leave your house too much or stay outside for too long. When it's like past minus 20, they already start giving you warnings to just take care, because if you don't know what you're doing, right, you may get ice bites on your fingertips or your earlobes, right? And that's ice bite basically is it gives you a chance of losing, right, a piece of your body because
Yes.
it freezes and dies, right?
Yeah.
So you just have to be very careful. But if you're careful, if you buy the right gear, if you know what you're doing, like, you're gonna be fine. Like nothing really happens. You don't really hear that people got frostbit or lost their fingers or lost their earlobes. That doesn't happen. That happens to like a homeless person, right, who just slept outside at minus 30. Then that happens.
Yeah.
But to regular normal people, it's not gonna happen. So you don't really need to be too afraid of that.
Yeah. And what I always tell people is that, okay, the city is prepared to handle the cold. So
Mhm.
you always have places where it's going to be warm. At your house, at your place, it's going to be warm. So you are well prepared with the gear, with the snow
Mhm.
clothes ready to
Yeah.
go outside. So you're not gonna feel the most cold ever if you are well prepared for that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
big time. Like people buy these leggings. It's like almost like women's leggings, but you just put it on, and then you put your pair of pants like regular jeans, and like if you have two layers going on, you barely feel the cold unless it's extremely cold. But you're gonna be fine. Every building is warm, right? Every building has heating. By law, they must have heating, right? So you don't if you're gonna walk inside a building, it's gonna be warm, guaranteed, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like you said, annoying because you have extra clothes with you. You have
Yeah,
there's no
exactly.
there. Yeah. I uh I lived in Minnesota in the US, so it's
Hmm.
on the border there. It's pretty much
Yeah, yeah.
Canadian weather
Hmm.
there, and I I I had the same sensations that you described. So everything you said, I related to, uh,
Hmm.
except one thing. Except one thing that in my experience was completely different because you live in a very big city and
Hmm.
I lived in a very small city. The city I
Uh-huh.
lived in, it had 3,000 people living in. So
Oh wow.
extremely small village.
uh,
And the experience with snow that I had was very different. Uh, First of all, when I left home to go to school, there was snow all over the place because it was too early and the snow car didn't went through that street.
hmm.
So I had to walk through the snow and to go through the snow to wait for my bus, and I had to walk like a block. That was the the worst moment in my life because I had to, and it was extremely cold, and I had to stand on the street, obviously, all geared up with
Yeah,
snow boots, snow pants, snow jacket, waiting for the bus to come in. Then at
yeah,
school, I would have to take it all off. So have normal clothes underneath. So it was very annoying and very cold.
uh,
But for the same example, when I went to the capital, Minneapolis, which is was a very
yeah,
big city as well, there wasn't these kind of problems. We could
yeah.
we could be much less prepared for
Hmm.
winter, if I
Hmm.
could say so. And
Yeah,
that's a good thing for you to consider when you're looking for a place to go in Canada, right?
definitely. Yeah, the bigger the city, the more snow plows they're gonna have ready to go as soon as it starts snowing.
Yeah.
And
Okay. I'm sure that in a second he'll be back. Okay, you're back.
all right, I don't know why it's doing this. I'm sorry.
Yeah, don't worry. Uh, why did you choose Toronto?
Basically, I just wanted a city that had like that was more alive than like a small city, and I couldn't really find a midway point. So it was either Toronto or Vancouver, my two choices. And I heard Toronto was a little bit more affordable, and which was the case. Today it's pretty much as expensive as Vancouver, but it was the case when I went there. It was a little more affordable, so that's pretty much why I chose it. But today, if I could choose, I would live in Vancouver because
Okay.
um, it's by the sea, right? It's on the coast, and it's just a much more beautiful city. It's more connected with nature because you have huge mountain ranges like all around, and you have great, beautiful lakes, and it's right by the sea, obviously. And the sea, I don't know. We come from Recife and Olinda, right? We live with the sea, right? So I kind of miss that. So that eventually I noticed how much I felt having like the sea right beside me, and yeah. So today if I could choose, I would live in Vancouver, and eventually I will move there because it's my ultimate city in Canada to live, just because of how connected to nature it is. Toronto is a very just urban city, like São Paulo, just very urban and just concrete all around you. There is some parks and nature, but it's very urban, and you're not gonna have much nature there. You really have to take the car and drive 4 hours to go to a really nice, beautiful, park or nature. In Toronto, you don't really have that much.
Yeah. Cool. Uh, do you still work? Do you do work with technology today? As you're the computer
Today I
guy?
just today pretty much I just invest in crypto coins and I make my money that
Oh,
way.
cool.
Yeah.
That's nice. Okay, so you're the
Mhm.
money guy. You're not the computer guy anymore.
Yeah, pretty much. I don't
Yeah.
do T. I don't do IT or anything like that. It's just
Mhm.
investing.
Which is nice because it means that you can actually, if you want to, you can move anywhere and you can live anywhere in the
Yeah,
world. Yeah.
exactly. That's a great thing. That's pretty much why I went into this because
Hmm.
it just gives you so much more freedom to live wherever you want, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Okay. Uh, you mentioned the difference of Toronto and Vancouver. Uh, lots of people also talk to me about. Have you been to Quebec or to the French part of Canada?
Yeah,
Is
I
it
went to Quebec.
okay? Is it very different from Ottawa? Sorry, not
Um,
Ottawa, but Ontario.
Yeah, from Toronto, it is very different from Toronto, Quebec
Okay.
City. Quebec City reminds me of Old Olinda. It's
Oh,
just
cool.
those types of houses and the stone block streets. It's just that vibe, right? The
Hmm.
city is kind of old. It's one of the oldest cities in Canada. So it's just very beautiful. It's like Old Olinda, but really well taken care of, and it just feels so nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it has just, I don't know if it's because I went there as a tourist, but everything just felt magical. The city felt magical, right? Yeah, I
Okay.
went in winter, during winter, and they have this huge castle called Chateau Frontenac, and it's one of the most beautiful buildings in Canada, right? And it's just amazing. I went When I went there to see it, it was snowy, and it just literally looked like a movie, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. So Quebec is definitely one of the most beautiful cities I've been to in Canada. And I haven't
Okay.
been to many cities, so I can't really say that.
But you're talking about your experience, which is totally fine.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, that I just asked you about these because you just gave me three examples in Toronto, Vancouver, and Quebec
mhm.
City. And we could see by those three examples that Canada has many different places if you just change the province.
Yeah,
So,
definitely, definitely.
as your description, three completely different places in only
Hmm.
one place, only one country. Uh, because people seem to think that it doesn't, Canada doesn't hold such a great diversity, which is something that I really disagree on. I think it's a very diverse country. You
It
can find
is.
many
It
different
definitely is.
aspects. Yeah.
Yeah. Just off the top of
Eight.
my head here,
Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
off yeah, off the top of my head, I can think of Prince Edward Island, which is a province, and it's a little island on the west coast. Sorry, on the east coast of Canada, and it's beautiful. It's so beautiful. Like I've only seen photos, but it's beautiful, and it accepts immigrants as well. There is Halifax, which is a very beautiful city. A friend of mine went there recently, and she sent me so many photos, and I was amazed. I was like, wow. And she's actually going to go live there with her husband, and they were trying to convince me to go live there as well. But it's a beautiful city. It's another option as well. Very acceptant of immigrants. There is uh, Montreal, in Quebec. They also accept immigrants. Vancouver, like there's so many cities, right? There's Calgary. Also, a lot of Brazilians go to Calgary as well, in Edmonton.
Yeah.
It's just there's so many places, right? You're not limited to Toronto or Vancouver. There's a lot more places.
Yes, of course. So 8 years in Canada, 8 years away from Brazil. What are the things that you miss from Brazil being in Canada?
Oh, I gotta say the food. I gotta say the
Okay.
food. Not talking about the obvious, which is friends and family, right? Everybody misses those,
Yeah.
but food is the first thing that comes to mind because North America doesn't really have great food, unfortunately. It's a reality. It's not like you have your Brazilian restaurants, and they make the nice Brazilian food like rice and beans, the classics, but it's just not the same. I don't know if it's the ingredient quality or what it is. Like it's just not the same. The food here in Brazil is just so much better, so much fresher. It just tastes better, and this is basically what it is. It makes me feel better when I eat it too, right? In
Okay.
Canada, you have the classics. Like in Toronto, you have more options because it's one of the most multicultural cities in the world. So you have so many food, so many different foods to eat. But like if you're not in Toronto, like you're gonna be very limited, right? You're gonna have like poutine, which is the classic Canadian food. You're gonna have pub food like wings and fried chicken, right? Just the classic North
Fish and
American kind
chips.
of food, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, fish and chips, all that kind of stuff. But yeah. It's the food's the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay. Poutine, for the ones that are not familiar with, it's pretty much French fries, gravy, and cheese. Is that
And
correct?
cheese. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
It's pretty tasty.
Okay. Yeah. He was going to say that poutine is pretty tasty, and it is, but it's simple. It's not something that is so difficult to find or make. Let's wait for him to come back. Okay.
I hate my Wi-Fi.
Okay, but pretty much you miss your Canadian Wi-Fi now. Okay, okay, I think you're back
All right.
now. Yeah, you miss
So
your Canadian Wi-Fi as well.
I do miss my Canadian Wi-Fi, man. Yeah, that's another good point. Um, so poutine is a great end of the party food, right? When you're drunk or hangover, like it's just a great food to eat. You just
Yeah.
feel great, and it's very tasty. But it's not really for every day because it's it's extremely caloric, right?
Yes.
But
It's
it's
not
tasty. It's nice. You're gonna you if you have after you have it for the first time, you're gonna want to have it a bunch more times. But
okay.
yeah,
Being
because it's really
being
good.
back being back in Brazil to visit. What are the things that you look here and you say, "Man, I miss Canada."
The lack of lanes in traffic.
Okay.
There's no lanes. People just you know do whatever like all the time, and it's just so weird. I've been driving a lot here, right, to go to places,
Okay.
and it's just annoying. People don't really respect lanes, and sometimes there is not even lanes on the road itself. Like you don't know where to put your car because there's no lanes,
Mhm.
right? That's the first thing that comes to mind because I've been really annoyed with that.
So there's no traffic jams in Canada?
There are, but it feels more organized, right?
Okay.
You don't People don't do things unexpectedly. They just don't like change lanes out of nowhere or stuff like that. They're on top of you, or people are not
Okay.
changing lanes all the time trying to cut to traffic. Like that doesn't really happen. Like people respect lanes and just follow, just wait. They're more patient, I feel. So yeah, if you're gonna drive a lot, it just feels better in my opinion.
All right. Last question for us is
All right.
if you're talking to someone who's thinking about moving to Canada,
Hmm.
what would you tell this person?
Oh man, that's rough. Um, just when it gets like really bad, when you're feeling really bad, like you just have to push through, right? That was one of the hardest things I had to do. It was just push through when you're depressed and when things are not going so great. It's gonna happen. Like it's definitely gonna happen. If you don't have friends there, if you're just going completely alone, and you have no one to lean on, you're gonna want to come back, and you're gonna want to give up, and it's a real thing. It's like a uglier side of immigrating. I don't know if a lot of people talk about this, but it definitely gets bad. Like especially like as I said, if you have no one, right? Like in the first few months, I had literally no one. I was just some days was really bad, and I just wanted to come back. But if you really want to have a better quality of life, and you're thinking about long term, and you're thinking about your future, like keep that in mind at all times. Never forget about it, and just push through when it's bad, because it's gonna get a lot better, and it's gonna be amazing. After you get your permanent residency or citizenship, everything is gonna be amazing.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you so much, Ron, for your time with
Thank
us.
you.
Thank you for your words. It was very, very nice. And that's it. We'll see each other.
All right, man. See each other. Can't wait.
Yeah.